All right, everybody, welcome back to the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast. We are recording on Tuesday, September 13th. This is episode 18. Troy, our podcast is almost ready for college.
It is. It's just graduating high school. Then we're going to be going to college and we'll be good to go. I should say I had confidence, but it's still amazing. Every episode we hear a new number, like episode 18. It's like, wow, but it's awesome.
Both of us had kind of made a mention in our show notes that this, I think, has really started to, this is the first time in the off season that it's actually, I think, felt like the off season. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I had the thought, I kind of put this in the show notes too, where now it felt kind of like the off season, but then when this episode goes live on Wednesday, it will be 23 days away from the October 7th game between the Predators and Sharks in Prague. And thinking of that made it seem like, well, the season's right there in training camps. I think they're all reporting right now. I think training camps start soon. I don't know the exact date, but they're all doing they're doing workouts right now. I think voluntary workouts and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I think I'm ready for hockey.
Yeah.
We just got to tread water as a hobby for these next 3 weeks. And then there should be tons of exciting players, hopefully breakout performances. And one of the things that we're going to start today is actually our 2022 previews. So I'm pretty pumped about that. Given it was a little bit of a slow week, I think both of us too felt a little bit like, oh my gosh, are we going to have anything to talk about? And then we're sort of a broken record here again too. I almost felt like we needed to cut stuff today because we got, so long story short, we have lots to get through and we should probably get rolling. Troy, you want to start with the game plan?
Definitely. On today's show, we're going to start with some interesting insights into Alex Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby values. Next, we will take a look at the upcoming 22-23 NHL season and who are some players that could be breakout candidates during the year. Then it's on to hobby news with some interesting stories that popped up over the last week. And I never even thought we were going to have that much hobby news, but now it just blew up. So we have a lot of quick topics to talk about. We'll then take a look at Gordie Howe cards and look at some of the interesting data around recent activities with his cards. This will be followed by a look at the 22-23 MVP release by Upper Deck and specifically some analysis around rookie values. Finally, we will end the show with new product releases and personal pickups and or sales.
I think one of the big storylines, I guess, that I'm predicting coming into next season is going to be the chase for Gretzky's record by Ovechkin.
Yeah.
Right? He's not going to break it this year, I don't think. He would have to have probably the greatest 100.
He'd have to go nuts.
Some goal short.
Yeah.
He'd have to go completely crazy. But I think depending on how he plays and his scoring productivity, he had 50 goals last year. He was the oldest player ever to score 50 goals. And so assuming that he has, and really as we looked before, for him to break the record, right, he needs to average 30 goals or something like that for 2 years, 3 years, something like that. And he's there. So as long as he plays pretty good, I guess we'll just leave it at that. I think that the hype is going to continue to grow. And one of the things that I've been, I guess, following this summer and thinking about a lot is just how intertwined he seems to be from a hockey card perspective with Sidney Crosby. Because I think that obviously they both are the same rookie year. To have two legendary players come out of the same rookie class, to me too, and we might have mentioned this before, and I'm curious your opinion on this, Troy. It also, I think, is a I don't know what you want to call it, like a line in the sand or a turning point in like ushering the modern era of hockey cards. Like really where you have the cup and rookie patch autos.
Yeah.
And it just feels like that these are the two guys that kind of ushered in the modern era. And what I've noticed is that they seem to be separating quite a bit. And so I thought we would dig into that a little bit. So looked at it a couple ways. Went to, first of all, I guess I'll start with last season production. Both had pretty decent years, especially for their age and tenure in the league. Ovechkin, 90 points, 50 goals, like we already mentioned. Crosby, right behind him, 84 points, 31 goals. I think, though, with Crosby, it seems like it's a little bit more team success that really elevates his stature in the league. And, that's one of the things we can talk about. I don't know where Pittsburgh is in relation to contending for the Cup this year, but both had pretty good seasons. Next, wanted to look at the Card Ladder Player Index, which tracks the summation of all the cards that Card Ladder puts for that in their Hockey Cards Index for that player. So I think I didn't write it down, Troy, but it's something like 18 cards for Ovechkin and 24 cards for Crosby.
Yeah, and these are the cards that are like vetted. They have a data analysis, right, assigned to them. If you go to their ladder, you find them. These are the ones that are tracked intensely, or is that the right word? Intensely, or
and I think every sale is verified.
Yeah,
so should be good, reliable data there. Looking at their player index for the past month, Crosby's down about 8%. Ovechkin's up about 3%. So again, seeing a little bit of a divide. For the past year, Crosby's down 10%. Ovechkin's up 75%. To me, what's significant about that is if you go back to January of 2021, so not quite 2 years ago, they were just about even. And since then, there seems to be a gulf or divide that's being created between the two, I guess, both their card values. So digging into some cards for a second, we'll start with both their 2005 Young Guns PSA 10. So Crosby currently, the value is $4,113. It's up about 3% in the past 12 months. Ovechkin is just under $1,000 more, so $5,111. It's up 16%. So Crosby up 3%, Ovechkin up 16%. Going to their Future Watch Auto, which again, of course, is 2005. Crosby current value is $13,258. That's down 4% in the past 12 months. Now here's where there's a little bit bigger of a difference, Troy. Ovechkin, $24,929. So almost double. Ironically, though, that's down 26% in the last 12 months. So apparently there's a big run on Ovechkin that's been corrected a little bit. But again, going back 2 years ago, these cards roughly had the same value. Actually, Crosby was worth a little bit more, about $8,400 compared to $7,400 for Ovechkin. And lastly, before we kind of discuss, I guess, our theories as to why or what's going to happen going forward, looking at the 2005, the Cup RPA, little tougher to gauge these. Obviously, there's only 99. They're extremely valuable, sought-after cards that don't come for sale super often. So I had to try to find cards that there was a decent number of sales over the last year or two. And I did find for the Crosby BGS 9.510, that last sold for $61,200 this past August, so a month ago, where I didn't find a lot of sales for Ovechkin's BGS 9.510, but I did find some for his 910, and that sold for $90,000 in May. So about a $30,000 difference there. So my first question is, do you see this continuing? Do you see the gulf getting wider between the two?
The gulf gets wider, I think, if Ovechkin can start the season scoring goals and that record gets back in the news. I'm not 100% sure, but a lot of this, I believe, is being driven by the record that he's chasing with Gretzky. And a lot of people, you've seen in the comments of our Instagram post, a lot of people are talking about Ovi and his chase just here and there. When any post that we put out there with, him in it, you hear talk about in the comment section about the goal chase. So I think that's one of the main trends. I think if Ovi comes out that first week and scores a couple of goals, I think it's going to keep widening. And Crosby, I don't know. Do you think Crosby's slowing down faster than Ovechkin? That's one of the things I've been thinking about with his injury history and everything. It's just like I always think with Crosby, he's one just headshot or stumble or anything from being done. And I don't think we think about that with Ovechkin. I think Ovechkin, and I could be wrong, he's had injury history, but I don't know if it's as dramatic as Crosby, obviously with head issues.
I think, though, at their age, it's hard to come back from any major injury. So, God forbid, like an ACL or something like that happens to Ovechkin or broken leg or something like that.
Done.
Right.
I think a head injury is more likely in hockey I don't know. I actually don't know what the rate is, but it just seems like an accidental elbow or something hits Crosby, and it could be done. I mean, he's had enough concussions that have been documented, and who knows how many have been undocumented.
Yeah, and I think it's good to also throw out there that this is not an argument of who's better or, they're obviously both legendary first ballot Hall of Fame players, and you can't take anything away from their accomplishments. It's just, like I said, going back to where we started the conversation, they're almost intertwined, right, from a hockey value perspective. And going back to 2 years ago, they were pretty much dead even, and we have this separation that has really been happening, and it appears that it's not getting smaller. To me, too, as I was thinking about this, Troy, is it fair to say that it's almost, if you try to compare the two, it's trying to comparing really a person who's known more for individual accomplishments versus a player more team-centered?
Yeah.
Right. And so if that's true, then it seems like for Crosby to close the gap or to continue to elevate his legacy, which they're going to need more team success. I mean, I don't see him leading the league in goals or scoring at this point. Do you?
Well, the way I hear what you're saying, I hear you saying that if the gap wants to close in with Crosby catching Ovi, he's got to become more selfish. That's what I hear.
You think so?
No, it's true. It's like Crosby, you think team player, team wins, the cups. Ovi, it's usually about the individual statistics and how many goals he scores and how many power play goals. And so I think it's definitely a good point.
Yeah, I just think it's one of we're going to talk a lot more about these as we continue to preview the upcoming season. But this is one of the interesting storylines that in a lot of ways will be fun to follow, to see how these guys do, of course, individually, how they continue to build on their legacies, and then what happens, because they're always going to be compared to each other. I just don't ever see an instance where they're not, right?
Yeah. Well, and two, think about it, they both come out or one of them comes out this year and struggles mightily. And all of a sudden it's like, oh man, now the retirement talks, starts. Should they just hang it up? But do I think that'll happen? No, small percentage, but just another facet that could come out about with this new season.
And I think another way to look at it too is, again, not even from the slighting Crosby perspective, but there's just probably a lot of speculation money going into Ovechkin right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's this huge iconic record that's just hanging out there, and he's in a really good position to grab.
Yep.
And so people are going to be really chasing the excitement and hype around that.
Well, especially a record that previously thought was unbreakable. I mean, not as unbreakable as the point record, but it's one of those records that people thought might never be broken, just total goals in a career. Obviously, I don't know if the points record will ever be touched.
And if Ovechkin does start fast and has a bunch of goals, has a great or productive season, the hype's only going to go up. Explode. And it's going to hit a point where it's going to be insane.
Yeah.
Right. Again, probably not this year. And I don't remember the time we mapped it out before in one of our early episodes. Yeah. I think it was like probably most likely 2 seasons or 3 seasons or something like that. Closer to 3, I think. Yeah. But okay, so that's probably enough on that. Again, just thought it was interesting to look at, and we'll definitely be following it and be curious to see where it goes.
Sure.
Okay, so from here, we want to, I guess, continue or start really in earnest our 2022-23 preview. And Troy, you did a whole bunch of digging into, we've kind of mapped out different topics that we want to talk about.
Yeah. And
I think we're starting with one of the most exciting ones. And from a hockey card perspective, what people will be most interested in, because these are the buy low, sell high candidates.
Yep.
And the breakthrough, who's most likely to have breakthrough performances this year. So I'll turn it over to you. And I actually haven't looked too much at your notes, so I'll be curious to see what you came up with.
Sure. Yeah. So like Josh said, we're kind of thinking about these previews, and the one I kind of want to start with was breakout candidates. So I call this like our prediction segment. And so you can like bookmark this and then at the end of the year flame us for being incredibly wrong or incredibly right if we get it right. But so when I looked at this, I wanted to separate them into two groups. And so I did the first group of 5 will be like rookie candidates who could also win the Calder Trophy. And the second group I said are existing players who could make a big impact or step up their game. And I tried to stay away from the obvious players like Zegras, Caulfield. We've talked about them. Everyone knows about them. So I tried to find another kind of tier of player that's maybe not so obvious for our breakout candidates. When I was doing the research on this, Scott Wheeler from The Athletic had a really good article on the Calder candidates. So his work is really helpful in kind of formulating thoughts. So I wanted to call that out. And
can I put you on the spot for a second?
Yeah.
And this is not a fair question to ask, so I'm going to acknowledge that right here. Do you have any idea what the criteria is to qualify for the Calder Cup?
I've looked it up. I think it's a 25-game limit, and it's something around age. I think you have to be under 26. I think those are the two big ones. I don't know if those
25-game minimum or limit?
Yeah, 25 game. You can't play more than 25 games. I think in or the previous you have
in a previous season.
I'm gonna get myself in trouble by talking myself out of what it was.
Well, if there's a limit, it would make sense that it would have to be like a previous season. Like you couldn't have played.
Yeah, you can play more than 25 or something, and you got to be I think under 26. Yes, it's out there. I should probably have written it down, but I can't remember
I'll look it up too. Yeah. Unfair question, but I thought I would ask anyways.
I think I'm close. I might be off on one of the technicalities. But when we're looking at these rookies, the thing you got to remember, a lot of rookies come in with a lot of hype, but you really have to figure out on the depth chart. You just can't look at talent. You got to figure out if they're going to play. How are they going to get minutes? They usually have to be in a top 6 spot to really get a lot of points on the offensive side, or maybe in the top 2 pair of defensemen. So that was another thing that Wheeler obviously addresses, and I kind of looked at too to make sure these candidates could be in that role. They might not be. You never know how training camp goes and what comes out of it. So that's kind of the first group with the Calder candidates. So
I think being on the power play too would make a big difference.
Yeah, power play for sure. I mean, you get your goals. So I am going to start, and this is no particular order. I just kind of threw them at the wall, and you'll see some names, and not everyone's going to agree, and we'll probably get told that we missed someone, but which is fine. If you have feedback, definitely throw it in the episode Instagram that goes out. But the first one I'm going to talk about, and it's probably something you've heard of, Josh, is Owen Power. So remember, this is the Calder group, Buffalo defenseman. Yep. One thing you'll notice about the Calder candidates, I think 19 is a good age to be. So he's 19 years old. Now, you look at his situation with Buffalo, he should get a bunch of playing time and have a ton of opportunity to show what he can do. So I think that is one of the major reasons you got to consider him to be one of these, Calder candidates. And obviously what his draft position was. He actually played 8 games last year and already was averaging 22 minutes a game. So it kind of tells you what Buffalo's already planning for him this year. And I put in my notes, I put in big, bold letters, he's going to play a lot. So I think that with him is just really key. He's one of those players, he's played well at every level. He's never basically failed at any level. He always excels and goes on to the next. And then exactly one of the big questions with him is, will he be on the power play? Which if he's not, that could hurt some of his point production, especially being a D. But if he plays well enough to get into it and be one of those top 2 power play units, I mean, he could really run away with some stuff if he plays like his potential and how Buffalo, I think, sees him playing.
For a defenseman, we're kind of thinking, right, that they're going to have to win the Calder, you're going to have to put up points, right?
You do. You don't have to specifically put up goals, but you got to get your points. Even Mo Sider, he was a D last year, I believe.
Yeah.
Won the Calder. I don't think he scored that many goals, but yeah, you got to get some points somewhere, because I think the days of just being a really good stay-at-home defensive defenseman are gone. I think for now, until the game morphs or changes, but for now you got to be part of the offense and you got to lead production. Even if it's not goals, it's assists or moving the puck or joining the rush.
I think your point on teams is really smart and accurate too, is that to get a lot of rookie production, it seems like you have to be a really good player, of course, and also on a lousy team that's going to give you tons of opportunity. Like if you think of the whole Detroit, where with Lucas and Raymond, not a good team, got tons of opportunity. They capitalized on the opportunity and did well for themselves. Even all of the whole crew on the Ducks, all the big rookies, they didn't seem like they were on great, maybe with the exception of Newhook on Colorado. So, I think that if you're and this is sort of becoming a Captain Obvious statement, because the worst teams are going to have the highest picks, which are going to get the best players. But it also, I think the point there is because there's not a lot of people to beat out, and they need to fill those top line spots, that they get a ton of opportunity.
Yeah, it helps being on a bad team at times when it's your first year to kind of show what you can do, or your first couple of years, and get a lot of production and get that big contract once you're eligible. So
the other point. Oh, sorry, I was just going to make about Owen Power is, and I'll kind of steal it from our MVP recap, is we did an Instagram poll yesterday about kind of the big four 2022-23 MVP rookies that were released with the set last week. And between Power, Matt Boldy, Marco Rossi, and Matty Beniers and Owen Power, we asked people, who are you most excited about? And Owen Power narrowly, but finished first in that poll. So, yeah.
And that's very interesting. I put a pricing note in here, but we'll cover him later in the MVP recap. So listen to more of the show if you want to hear his pricing update. So next, you actually mentioned the next guy, Matty Beniers, center for the Kraken. So this is our second one, 19 years old. He right now, looking at just some pre-analysis and what the pundits are saying that covers Seattle, he definitely has a good shot at being number one center for the Kraken, and definitely a top six forward, which would be huge for him, getting number one center playing time, or even top six forward playing time if they decide they need to move him out of center or put him on a wing. Again, another player, we saw him in games last year. I totally missed this. He played 10 games and had 9 points, which obviously is a small sample size, but it puts him on pace for 74 points, which if you can replicate that this year, that's huge. That would be an awesome season.
Was he the Michigan kid?
I believe so.
Yeah, because I think I remember him right at the end of last season getting called or signing his contract after the college season had ended, and just for that week or so going scorched earth with scoring. So
yeah, he was. He's a Michigan kid, or University of Michigan. I had to look him up, but it rang a bell. But yes, he was Michigan. He's another one. Who knows how the Kraken are going to be, but one of the call-outs is that you look at with him, does he have enough talent to even help him produce points? That's another thing. It's good to be on a bad team, maybe from a points perspective, to show what you can do. But if you have no one to help you get points, it could be kind of an issue. So the Kraken are kind of one of those teams. I think the Kraken are going to be super exciting though, because they got some young players that will be fun to watch.
Yeah, you wonder how the Shane Wright fact is going to factor into that too. And I think from a hockey card perspective, obviously Seattle is going to be just pumped for any promising rookie. Yeah. Beniers right now represents the first real big rookie chase for that franchise.
Yep, for sure. And again, he's another one pricing to come later in the show. Next guy, I think, is the one a lot of people have pinged to be a Calder, definitely in the running, is Mason McTavish, center for the Ducks. Again, I don't know if I mentioned this, but Beniers is 19. Guess how old McTavish is? 19. So we've got 3 19-year-olds. McTavish, after the performance at the World Juniors, it felt like his hype exploded. Everyone was talking about him, and everyone wants to see what he can do in his full season. And I think he's definitely got a shot. He's definitely got, I think, the most hype out around any of these people right now, given his play in the juniors. Obviously, he's a huge dude, physically, strength, size, power. He's got all the things you would want. One of the things to note is exactly where will McTavish end up in the lineup, where he could possibly be a third-line center, putting him behind Zegras and Ryan Strome. But if that happens, you could see the Ducks possibly moving him to a wing first line or second line wing to play with those two to get better, get more points, get him in there more. Because if he's a third line center, I think that'd be tough for just your playing time.
Is that a tough transition from center to wing?
It is if you only known center, yes. Obviously, I think it's definitely a tough transition, but I think going from wing to center might be even tougher at times. But you can tell, like center, sometimes you just tell them, go after the puck, wherever the puck is. You just go after it. You know, that can be the real dumbed down version of being a center. Listen, I have a whole theory that I won't get into, but hockey is becoming so fluid and positionings are becoming so fluid and interchangeable that positions is just almost where they start the game on the face-off.
Yeah, it's like basketball in a way.
It's basketball or soccer. I've read some really good analysis on how hockey and soccer are so similar and how hockey, you should refer to them as fronts and backs. And it's kind of, you're seeing it. You watch an NHL game, these guys it's the fluidity is the word I'm looking for, and how the D are jumping in. And I don't know, there might be a time down the road, 20 years from now, where it's not even, you don't even have positions. It's just 5 players, as one unit.
Well, probably supports the concept of movement, right?
Yeah,
always keeping moving, and by giving people freedom to go wherever they want on the ice.
And even obviously I coach high school, but we're seeing it down in our level. We kind of coach our team like that. It's 5 players on the ice, and it's all movement, fluidity. Positioning is just a position. Sometimes you don't have to adhere to it. But anyways, back to McTavish. I laughed when I saw my note that he has one of the best Upper Deck portrait photos in, I think, portrait card history, with that hair, that afro, or it's not an afro, but it's just a big
poof ball.
Big poof ball, like they got shocked by lightning. But again, McTavish should be up there. If he can get top 6 minutes, he should be a beast. And
I have the portrait out of 25, black and white.
That's right, you do.
For sale on eBay. Shameless plug.
If you want to go get it. Interesting. So I just looked at his pricing real quick. His 21, 22 Young Guns raw, it fluctuates all over the place between $25 and $40. But it was earlier around early July, it was $20 to $25. So you can see there's a little bump there, probably from the World Juniors. Now the talk's coming, and once the season starts, if he starts well, it should just jump up again. But I know, Josh, you wanted to throw in a note around, is this the time to sell McTavish if you have him?
We've been saying, Troy, for two and a half months now.
Yeah.
Buy in the off season, sell during the season. He might be the one guy that you could consider selling now, because the hype is so high. You have to think, what does he have to do to live up to it to this point? And is it natural that there might even be a little bit of a letdown from his World Juniors? So I think that actually, in my opinion, the safe play is to cash in now and sell. And then if he doesn't get a top 6 position, or he struggles a little bit, and the hype wanes and people go to whoever else is setting the world on fire, then maybe you can buy it back at a little bit lower. That's definitely a good strategy or a good play if you think that's how it'll play out. All right, number 4 on the list, Cole Perfetti, center/left wing. So he kind of intertwines depending on where they need him for the Jets. And he's the old man in this group at 20 years old. Obviously with Perfetti, very skilled, can play almost anywhere and play with anyone. And he's really good at passing and helping his teammates better, which I know the Jets, I've seen interviews with their coaching staff, they really appreciate. A lot of talk from the Jets management on how Perfetti is a big piece of the puzzle. So you hear that stuff in the media, so it kind of leads you to believe that they're going to get this guy playing time and really see what he can do. Again, he has to be on the top 2 power play units and be a top 6 forward to be in the discussion, I think. Personally, it seems like he is in the running for a top 6 spot. It'll kind of depend on training camp and how he looks. But if he falls out of that top 6, I think it's going to be really, really hard for him to be in the talk for the Calder with the Jets. And then his pricing, obviously this one, 2021, 22 Young Guns raw is $10 to $15. Fluctuates in around there. So
definitely
if you're
cheap.
high on Perfetti, it's probably a buy.
Yeah.
At this point, if you think that he is a prime candidate for breakout performance at 10 or $15, there's probably a lot of upside there if that happens.
All right, next guy, and fifth on the, so this is the last one of the Calder candidates, and this is kind of the biggest flyer that I kind of researched was Jack Quinn, right winger for the Sabres. Again, he's another old man at 20. There is talk he might not make the team out of camp. So just remember that in this. But if he does make the team out of camp, I think with Buffalo, I think there's opportunity for him. There would be three wingers ahead of him with Victor Olofsson, Jeff Skinner, and Alex Tuch. And if he can become the fourth winger, and again, it's going to sound like a broken record, and get that top six playing time, he could really do some things and help himself in that running for a Calder Trophy. Obviously, they have Peyton Krebs, who's also kind of in that group looking for top six playing time. So there'll be a good battle, but maybe the battle will help him and make him excel. And it all comes down if he can get enough playing time early in the season to show what he can do. And then if he does, it's holding on to that because there's going to be a definite people behind him with Buffalo trying to get into that lineup.
Yeah, so there's a couple teams that, as we've followed hockey cards much more closely over the last 6 months, that seem to have 14,000 rookies. It would be the Arizona Coyotes, right? And the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah.
And in this case, we're talking about the Sabres. They do seem to have a lot of interesting young talent that if they could have a couple of these guys really figure it out, they could be a decent team, right?
Definitely. And so with Jack Quinn, I looked up pricing on his 22-23 MVP raw sales. They're really low, $3 to $4. So he
might be a Series 1 Young Guns.
Yeah, candidate. He'll be a Young Guns for sure. I shouldn't say that because you never know who they're going to hold back for Series 2 and all that stuff.
Sure.
But he definitely will have a Young Guns this year, I'm assuming. Anything else you want to talk about Calder? Was there anyone I missed, Josh, that you thought off the top of your head, or any other thoughts?
Well, it kind of goes back to, and this is a terrible argument because we don't know what we're talking about, but being Wild fans, of course, I would assume that Matt Boldy played too many games last year.
Yeah, he had to. He played 40 some, I think, games.
Yeah, okay. Boo.
Yeah, we got to go for our Minnesota take. All right, so let's go on to the next group, the non-Calder candidates who could make a big impact. Again, did my research, used The Athletic, used a really good article by Greg Wyshynski of ESPN. I will say this, it's really nice having a lot of really good hockey pundits out there that do a lot of research, and it's really nice to help kind of get your stance on them. So again, this is the non-Calder candidates and trying to be less obvious players. So some of these you're probably going to hear and be like, what are you talking about? So this one I think will have a little more controversy if people don't agree with the name. So the first one I put on here was Oliver Bjorkstrand, right wing from the Seattle Kraken. And he's an old man at 27 years of age, but coming right into his prime. If you don't know who Oliver Bjorkstrand is, he was traded to Seattle from Columbus, and the trade was made after Columbus got Johnny Gaudreau. So they felt Bjorkstrand was kind of a piece they didn't need anymore. It could move him. Last year, he had a career high in points. He had 28 goals and 29 assists for a total of 57. And if you look at his stats, the last 3 years, he consistently has higher point totals every year. And where his stuff gets really interesting is he is an absolute analytics darling if you are into advanced analytics with hockey. I'm not going to go into all the definitions, but if you know anything about Corsi or Corsi 4 percentages or Corsi relative percentages, it's actually he's really high in those metrics. And for the people that do know, his Corsi 4 percentage last year was 56.7%. And anything over 50 is really good. Over 50% is really good. And his Corsi 4 relative percentage was 11.9%, which, again, is incredibly well. And I should give a little primer. If you think about Corsi, think of it as possession metrics, but it uses shot attempts. So basically, the higher the Corsi 4 percentage, the more you're contributing to shot attempts for your team. That's a basic way to think about it. Instead of tracking time on ice, they figured out this proxy metric, and guess what? It comes really, really close to matching shots by Tom on ice and all that stuff. So it's pretty amazing how this stat is pretty easy to calculate. But anyways, absolutely analytics darling that has increased production for 3 years straight. He's going to be given a big impact on the Kraken. He's going to get a lot of playing time. He'll be a top-line player, lots of ice time, and could have a really big season. And again, you look at this guy, his young guns, is 2016, 2017, it's $1. You can go get a raw one for $1. So I think he's a really interesting play and a really interesting player to watch.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I actually, well, I don't know, this is the Minnesota person. We got to tie everything to here. I've coached, his cousin is a coach in Farmington. So it's kind of interesting to hear like just how his season's going and everything.
Oh, yeah. Is he a Minnesota kid?
No, he's from Denmark. So they're cousins, but they're like I think one of the family members moved to Denmark, and then that's where he was born. And then the guy that I know that lives in Farmington, I think he's from here. But it's interesting to talk to him about like their season and everything.
This week on Hockey Cards Gongshow, we talk about the Oliver Borgstrand family tree.
And I'm going to sit here and try to relate every single thing I can to Minnesota because
that's the most Minnesota thing ever.
We're good Minnesotans. We've told you this, and I know it's kind of annoying, but at times it's fun. All right, second player. Kirby Dach, center, Montreal Canadiens, 21 years old. Oh, Kirby Dach. I put down in my notes, this is really a shot in the dark, but there's some stuff you kind of like about him. Now,
this is the change of scenery pick, right?
This is total change of scenery. You know he struggled. He had his first 3 seasons with Chicago, and they were brutal. Absolutely brutal. And Scotty Bowman comes out and then calls you out for your terrible face-offs, and you're not playing in the system. That's kind of a big deal. He last year, 9 goals, 17 assists for 26 points in 70 games. With him, it's change of scenery and it's potential. He was a 3rd overall pick in 2019. He really the potential's still there. I don't think anyone's ready to give up on him yet, that he's a complete draft bust or anything. But I think it was really good for him to get out of Chicago. Whatever it wasn't working, and it was time to move on. And this going to Montreal might be the catalyst he needs to have his breakout season, or not even like definitely, it has to be a breakout season. He can't just tread water again, or else, it's not gonna. His I don't know what I want to say. His point production might just stagnate right around where it's been, which hasn't been a lot.
When he's only 21,
yeah, a lot of time.
So that, but I think so. I think this would be in the high risk, high reward category, right? So don't run out and spend your kid's college fund on Kirby Dach rookie cards for sure. But, again, it's the change of scenery pick. And I would think, though, that this will be a big year as far as where the trajectory of his career goes. If he can't make it happen now.
Yeah, and I think probably not a lot of hype in Montreal with what they got going on. So I think this will be I think it's just a perfect situation for him to have a breakout year. If you look at his rookie card, it's a 2019-20 Young Guns raw. It's actually around $35. If you find it, it fluctuates around that range. And he has found some PSA 10 sells that it was around $110. So it's obviously not a super cheap card. It's not the dollar that Bjorkstrand was, but it's still relatively, I don't know, probably not cheap for how he's played, but there's definitely, with his potential and what could happen in Montreal,
it shows you how much hype drives value. Because obviously there's a big age difference between him and Bjorkstrand, 6 years.
Yeah.
But from a point production standpoint, Bjorkstrand had double the points that Dach did, and his Young Guns goes for $1. So
that's true. All right, number 3 on the list, Ross Colton, left wing, Tampa Bay Lightning, 26 years old. If you remember his name, he had a really good playoff run with the Lightning last year. He had 5 goals, 4 assists for 9 points. And, when I say really good playoff run, he just started to show what he can do, showed that he good puck retrieval, can kind of be a catalyst to help that team move forward in seasons to come. He had 22 goals and 17 assists last year for 39 points. And the one very interesting stat about him, if I asked you, actually I should have not even said this, but He is ranked third over the past 3 years for goals per 60 minutes for forwards. He has 1.45 goals per game at 5-on-5 per 60 minutes of playing time, which the only two people above him are Austin Matthews and Jacob Vrana, which surprised me. That one I didn't expect, but when he gets playing time, he scores. And if I remember his shooting percentage was like 12 or 13%, even though it's not the absolute end all be all, but that's pretty high. We have Andres Palat going to the Devils, so it created kind of a room for Colton to get into that top 6 playing time, and it will be interesting to see him get more minutes to see if he can continue that goals per 60 rate. Because if he can, that could lead to some really good, really high end numbers for him. It'll be
sure.
So that's kind of the play with him to see, using his past goal scoring rate, can he get top 6 playing time and continue that?
Yeah.
And so with him, if you're looking at him, he's one of these 21, 22 young guns. His raw is around $2 to $3. So
pretty cheap flyer.
Yep, cheap flyer. I think there's a lot of good things being on Tampa. I think helps him. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. The fourth person I looked at was, now this one might be it's in that rookies last year kind of class. I had Dawson Mercer from the Devils, center, 20 years old.
Yeah.
So really good rookie season, 17 goals, 25 assists for 42 points. The thing that was curious about him is last year when Jack Hughes was injured, they actually elevated Mercer into those, I think it was top 6, second line. I can't remember if he was second line or first line center where they had to put him. And then he did really well. And then when Hughes came back, they actually switched him to wing. They switched Mercer to wing to get more playing time. So there's obviously potential. They saw what he could do. If you can, be a center or wing, he should get a lot more playing time this year and get into those top 6 forward minutes. However, when that's the case, he's a complete liability on defense. I remember watching a couple of games with him, and sometimes you didn't know what he was doing. And his plus minus, even though I hate plus minus, I don't think it's really that telling, but it was a huge number. It was like, I can't remember, like minus 28, minus 30, somewhere in there, which as much as I don't like it, you don't want to be that low when you see it. And so his 21, 22 young guns, raw is $10 to $15. So he's in that mid-range of this group that we're talking about. And then I could not let this list. This is the last guy on the not the Calder list. I had to get a goalie in there. I'm going to butcher his name, but it's Alexander Georgiev, I think is how you say it, goalie. He's going to be the Colorado Avalanche, probably the starter. He's 26 years old. He is probably the best candidate for a breakout goalie season that's not like Jeremy Swayman or any of those, the guys about that played really well, the Shesterkins. This guy was a backup to Shesterkin last year, and before then he was a backup to Lundqvist. So he's kind of been sitting on the bench. He's got his spot playing time. He's done really well. Now he goes to Colorado, who has Pavel I can't say his name. Francouz. Yeah, Francouz. Because they traded Kemper, and all the word is out of management. They're all looking at Alexander Georgiev to be the starter. They traded for him, and then they immediately gave him an extension for 3 years, $3.4 million. And I'm starting to read some Colorado news sites that were saying there's a lot of rumors that Colorado's looking at trading Francouz. So I think you can probably pretty much use a pen and put Georgiev in the starting role. We'll see what comes after training camp. But if he can be the starter and play well with Colorado, I think you have huge potential to have a breakout season for this guy. There's a lot of things that can go well with Colorado. I'm looking at his pricing. His 2017, 2018 Young Guns raw is $30 to $35. So there's some pricing got baked, or some value increase got baked in from what's coming out. But again, it's still a rather cheap Young Guns if you want to take a flyer. And if he can get starting, if he can be the named starter and then play well, it should go up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good list, Troy. And we should probably mention for about the 400,000th time, but we'll keep mentioning it. Do your own research.
Yeah.
We're not about, these are interesting players to us. And I think too, there's a larger topic baked in here in that when you think about, okay, do I invest in any of these guys? Well, first of all, if you just PC a team or a player, then buy their cards. But if you want to look at it from an investment standpoint, like a short term or medium term, anybody that's in a breakout candidate position, I think I would say, I would come into it with the mindset of, okay, I'm going to get in, and then within a month or 3 months, try to get out.
No.
I don't think any of these guys are going to be in the next Alexander Ovechkin.
No.
Or Connor McDavid. Troy and I have talked a little bit about this too, from our own understanding of hockey cards and just themes we can bring to the show. If you look back at the valuable hockey cards that come from the most legendary players, there's only a handful, like 3 or 4 at most per decade.
Yeah.
That really get to that point. And, so none of these guys are going to have a cup RPA that's worth $50,000 likely, 15 years from now. Yeah. It could happen. Sure. Anything can happen. Right. But I just think it's important to try to frame the mindset of at least how we're looking at these players. And okay, these are some guys that we might want to try to get on the cheap now. And then hoping they get off to a decent start, flip, and then use the money to buy the bigger cards or PC items that we want to get. Is that a fair way to put it?
Definitely a fair way to put it. And I kind of mentioned it earlier when I was talking, but please give us feedback if you disagree or think we missed someone that wasn't a Captain Obvious person in either group, actually. Please reach out on Instagram or Facebook and let us know. I'd love to hear thoughts from the community.
Okay, Troy, tons of hobby news to get through, so we'll try to go as quick as we can. First, a little bit on the hockey side. I don't know if you saw, but Montreal named Nick Suzuki their captain at 23. He's the youngest captain in Canadiens history, so that's kind of cool.
That's really cool, and I think there's a general trend. I was trying to find it, but it seems like even captains are getting younger. It seems like players are getting younger and captains are getting younger.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously now there's going to be more expected, but it could create, I don't think his values, I didn't look, but because I was pretty sure that they're not going to go up just because he's named captain.
No.
But it's one little piece of whatever the recipe for hype is, right? That, if he starts hot out of the gate, then we could see some movement there, but just thought that was an interesting note. Okay, moving on more to the business side of the hobby. We're seeing lots of confirmed, quote unquote, not to us, just we're, going off of other reports, rumors that the Fanatics purchase of Panini America is imminent. And I think one important distinction here to make is that it's not Panini Corporation, it's Panini America. So I don't know exactly what the delineation between the two is, but I know I'm sure all the international soccer stickers and that and other, Panini is an Italian company, so that they would retain that part of the business. But when it comes to basketball cards and baseball cards and football cards and WWE and other stuff, that Fanatics would take over there as well. The other rumor that seems to be being reported quite a bit is that Josh Luber is already out at Fanatics. Again, we're just going off of other reports there. What's interesting to me about that, Troy, and I want to get your thoughts on all this, but is that if Luber is in fact out, I think the only kind of hockey note there is both of us, I believe, had previously heard him in interviews say that he really has no interest in hockey. Change of leadership, that might change, right?
Yeah, I'm going to not quote him specifically, but if I remember from his interview he did with Sports Card Nonsense, it was his quote was kind of, to paraphrase, he almost said, I want hockey to stay with Upper Deck, is kind of what he came off as. So, yeah, if he's out, then who knows what happens now.
Yeah, so it kind of also leaves Upper Deck on an island, so to speak, right? Where they're the one lone, I guess Leaf, if you want to throw them in there too. But as far as card manufacturing companies who have a license with a league or players association, like obviously Upper Deck does with the NHL, they would be sort of the lone wolf other than Fanatics. So to me, other than that little maybe interesting hockey note, now with the change of leadership, could they be interested in hockey? Who knows? But to me, the overall kind of key question is it good? Is it good for Fanatics to basically own a monopoly on most sports card production?
Yeah, I'm on record saying this. I do not want Upper Deck to get bought by Fanatics. I want Upper Deck to be separate. I think they need to be separate. If you have your 4 major sports organizations in the U.S. owned by one company, I don't know how that would ever get through approval, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not the government. I don't know if they would approve all of that. But if they actually get Panini, I mean, that gives because Panini doesn't really what license they're going to lose. So Fanatics right now with Topps under their belt has baseball. They're going to get football and they're going to get basketball from Panini in, is it 2 years or a year?
Yeah.
Things stay status quo. Now, Fanatics goes out and buys Panini. I don't know what that does. Like all that puts, 3 of the big ones with Fanatics. I don't know how it plays out with soccer because Topps makes soccer cards right now. Panini makes soccer cards, if I remember right. I think FIFA license. There's a FIFA license. Soccer's a convoluted mess. We need to get an expert from soccer cards on about that. But from my standpoint, I don't think it's a good thing for Fanatics to own all these companies. And if they buy Upper Deck, I think it could be, I don't know. I would not like it at all.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Upper Deck remains not part of Fanatics too. I think that interesting, or I don't know, you decide if it's interesting, but I think in the short term it's a good thing. In the long term, it's a bad thing. One of the fears that, and this is not an original idea that I know many others have had, is, well, if Fanatics didn't buy Panini, that what's Panini going to do for the remaining year or two of their license? Are they going to go scorched earth on the sports card industry
and overproduce it? Yeah,
overproduce it, try to squeeze every last dollar they can before they lose it. So I think this buys a little protection against that sports cards for the next couple of years will be run with a long-term perspective versus a short-term perspective. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Beyond that, though, it seems like that if I was a breaker or local card shop owner, there'd be a lot of uncertainty right now.
Yeah, that's the one thing. The one thing I'm most interested about, and the one thing that I'm nervous about for these owners of card shops, and how is distribution going to work? Because I think we've all heard Fanatics is more direct consumer, I believe. Yeah, we've already heard the stories of them cutting out. I think it was GTS distribution was a big distributor, and they've told them you're not getting more allocation from us. But part of me, as being personal and sports card collector, I kind of want to see what they do, because sometimes it'd be interesting to see if they can cut out the middleman. What does that do to pricing? However, I don't want my local card shop to go out of business. We both love going to card shops. We love going the experience and buying product there. So I don't know if I don't want them to go away. So that's it's nerve wracking what's going to happen at the end of the day with these deals.
Yeah, I would think that if ultimately, and I don't know enough about the business side or the operational side of the hobby, maybe to have the most informed opinion on this, but if we go off of like what Upper Deck has told us directly for what they sell these boxes for, they get marked up a lot by the time people like you and me buy them. And is that necessary? Is it necessary to have distribution in there? Sure. Right? You could consider local card shops as, obviously it's retail, right? And maybe have a couple online retailers, but these big distribution companies that maybe doubling and tripling the price.
More than that, football is insane. It's more than that. It's like 5, 6, 7, 8 times. You can find the factory costs. If you dig hard enough on the internet, you can find what these companies sell the boxes to like the distribution companies for. And then you'll see the retail price that it is. And it's just like, it's amazing how stinking marked up they are. But,
so yeah, it'll be nothing official's come out. Everywhere I see, though, it seems that it's imminent.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait for that. The one other kind of interesting note is I've seen now over the last 4 or 5 days that Michael Rubin, the CEO and founder of Fanatics, has done a number of interviews, and he's been pretty vocal about his desire to eliminate redemptions, saying that, that collectors hate them, which is true.
I've never heard anyone say, "Man, I love getting a redemption."
So, and apparently he's serious about doing that. To me, that's a noble concept. It'll be really fascinating to see how that comes about, because obviously you're reliant on the athlete signing the card or label or sticker, whatever the auto is going to be. And, they can be fickle. But if any company could probably accomplish that, it would be Fanatics, because a couple things. Number one, they're so intertwined with these leagues to begin with. And then the really smart strategic thing they did to unseat part of the licensing from Topps and Panini was to give equity into the players associations. Now the players have an invested interest into signing more cards and maybe getting it done on time. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens on the Fanatic side, and if that in turn, puts pressure on Upper Deck to follow suit from a hockey perspective. Yeah,
it'll be interesting. I was curious if he was really serious about it. I wonder if there's language in the agreement with the players associations on the redemptions and getting rid of them, if there's any timeline, or if that's just something he's throwing out. But I mean, if I'm him, I'm going to be like, listen, we're giving you guys equity. This is one piece of this hobby that we know no one likes. So let's get rid of it. And understand that there's certain situations and you'd have to figure workarounds. But I mean, redemptions, we know sometimes why they're there, but no one likes them. They stink.
Okay, so we just covered mergers and acquisitions. Now let's go to new product development and innovation for a second. So I just saw in the last day or so, maybe it was even today, that Beckett is innovating a little bit, and they're launching a new service called Beckett Collect. Haven't done a huge deep dive into it, but it looks like they acquired for lack of a better, phrase or term, a collection tracking platform called Nox, Noxx, and they're rebranding it as Beckett Collect. It seems pretty similar to Card Ladder from a little bit that I've dug into it. If you're interested, you can go to Beckett.com/collect and check it out. There's an early access that you can sign up for as part of their beta release. The key features seem to be tracking card values, comping cards, displaying your collection. It seems like that they're trying to build some sort of social component into that. I always get a little bit wary of that. Any company that tries to create a social platform inside of their service usually doesn't work out, because you have to be better than Instagram. And that's going to be tough to do. But to me, the big takeaway here is that Beckett has made actually a lot of changes in the past couple months. They seem to be very serious about innovating, and who knows what'll work, what won't work, what sticks, what doesn't stick. That's time will tell in that regard. But I'm just excited to see them really trying to improve their services and innovate a little bit.
That's the key, is that we've talked about it. They need to innovate. They were kind of a running joke for a while, actually getting a website that looks like it's from 2020 and not in the late 90s. And then with this acquisition and what it's going to entail, I'm really curious how they're going to do track values. I'm worried that they're going to use their back, because they do. I think they have a marketplace. They have a marketplace. They have a subscription service where you can look up values. I don't know. Maybe I'm way out of the loop, but I've only heard really kind of bad things about Beckett values, that they're not really realistic. You can still get your catalog or your monthly magazine, I think, if you want, and find values. But I'm curious how they implement that. Are they going to go and track things like Card Ladder does, where you do eBay sales and all the different areas that are out there to find values? I'm curious what they end up doing for values.
Yeah, my last frame of reference for Beckett values was 12 years old, where that magazine was basically the sports card Bible, right? Yeah. And I would be curious to know how closely that follows what eBay comps would be.
That's interesting.
Or, the formula that they use to figure out what those values are. So again, I just thought it was kind of interesting. it shows that there's more and more money being invested into the space, and people are innovating, and that's typically a good sign from a market perspective that companies want to get in or invest in to make new products and services. Along those lines, another week, Troy, another new grading company. The captain is back in it. Derek Jeter has the arena. Honestly, did not look a ton into it. Took a very cursory view of it. But what really has stood out to me about it is, and I guess what I find interesting, a lot of the, and I don't want to get into trouble here, and I'm sure there's a lot of differences, but I'm just coming at it from more of the, hey, I'm just a consumer that has cards and, is a collector. The value proposition seems pretty similar to Tag in that there's two things that really stood out to me when I looked at their marketing information. The first was that, removing the human element of grading, however they plan to do that. And then the transparency in the grade reports. So when you get a card graded, here's the grade you got, here's why it got the grade you got. And both those things seem like positive changes, whether it be coming from Tag or the Arena or some other company. And I'm really curious and I've actually probably thought too much about this because it's probably a waste of my time, but how are the big established companies going to respond? And because you think about it, and this is where I guess from like a business strategy perspective, compare, well, what are the pros and cons of being the new upstart that doesn't have any credibility, nobody knows about you, so that hurts you, but it's a lot easier to make significant changes and to innovate versus, how does how does PSA at this point come out and give grading transparency?
Yeah.
Right? Do they say, well, any card going forward, we tell you why it's a grade? Well, what about the 40 million or however many cards they've graded in the backlog? That would be a challenge to try to figure out how to introduce some of these concepts that to me anyways make a lot of sense, right? If I send, because I've been frustrated that myself, right? Where you send a card in to get graded and you're just baffled as to what their logic was. And I suppose it doesn't mean you're going to agree with it always, but at least knowing that they say, oh, we graded the centering this, and here's the schematic that shows.
We saw a scuff or there was a dimple or something that maybe
here it was on the card. It's like, oh, okay. At least I understand why the card got that grade at that point. So to me, it's the similarity in features that we're starting to see with these new companies that's interesting. And then, of course, that you can't escape, having the backing of Jeter is going to carry some weight, right?
Yeah, I think so. Not that, I don't know. It's a name, right? It's Derek Jeter. I'm really liking the transparency that Tag and this company are coming out with, because that's something I've been screaming about. I love the QR codes. I want to scan it. I want to see my report. I want to know why I got this grade. So I will say this. I love the innovation that Tag and this company seems they're going to be bringing to the space. It would be really curious to see how this plays out and how they push these bigger guys like PSA, SGC, Beckett. Who's the one I'm forgetting? CGS? Is that one? CSG. CSG. Yeah, I'm curious. I hope they push them to innovate, because I think they haven't really had to recently. They've kind of just been sitting there, especially like PSA. I'm curious what comes out of this. I'm liking that new companies are coming in. I'm liking that they're bringing new ideas to the space, which I think can help all of them. It'll be interesting to see how these play out now, with them kind of getting crowded.
Well, the problem, and again, maybe Nat Turner would have different information, but so this is more just my speculation, but I would think that the problem that PSA has faced over the past really 18 months is that when you have a massive issue, it's a good issue, but you have 12 million cards in your backlog waiting to be graded, is all of your energy have to go into solving that problem while the whole rest of the world innovates against you. So it's like the opportunity cost that PSA has had to, of trying to figure out how do we deal with the overwhelming amount of business that people are trying to give us is, has that taken resources away from it? Maybe it hasn't, like I said, we're not in their meetings or anything like that. But it will be interesting to see how it shakes out. It'll be interesting to see the velocity of more companies that try to get into this space. I guess one more note on the arena as far as fairness of conversation is much like with the Beckett Collect thing, it does seem like there's a broader spectrum of services and features that they're looking to offer. You can go to look up their website for that, but I think there's a marketplace component and a social component that.
I think they're doing vaulting too, right? I think that was something. So
sure. Switch over to a little bit of card show news. There's a couple more guests announced for the Toronto Sports Expo coming up. I think November 10th it starts, or 9th, something like that. Obviously in Toronto. Two kind of, I think there's 3 more notable names. The first one I'm pretty excited about is Dominik Hasek. That's one that I might take advantage of. And I've got a bunch of his raw rookies. It'd be kind of cool to get one of those signed.
I will give you $20 if you can get him to sign one of his cards with a mean words for Putin. I think you know what I wanted to say on there. I just want to see what he would say about that. He came out with some very, very strong opinions on Putin, so I think that'd be funny.
Well, and pardon my naivete. He's Czech, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
Wait, there's no love lost between and Russia.
The next guy is, and boy, you have a lot of notes that I haven't read here, so I'm about to let you go off here.
This was Troy venting.
Is it
Jean-Sebastian Giguère?
Jean-Sebastian Giguère.
Yeah,
I forgot what it was. Johan or John. So he'll be signing. Okay, Troy, get ready for your mic drop here.
Great. I mean, he was a good goalie for his time. If you're a Wild fan, you cannot like this guy because he literally just broke all our hearts. 2003 playoffs. Wild come out of nowhere, upset Colorado, win in overtime in round 1. Probably the biggest goal in Wild history was that Brunette overtime goal to push them on to round 2. They go on to the Western Conference Finals. Then they run up against Giguère, who shut him out the first 3 games. He stopped 99.2% of the shots in the Western Conference Final. And it wasn't like we got 10 shots a game. It was 35 and a half shots we averaged a game, the Wild did. And he just stopped everything. I remember watching those. I still burned into my memory how good he was and how he single-handedly beat the Wild. I'll let him know that if I see him. No, I'm just kidding. He's really cool, though, if you're into Giguère cards or you have some you want to get signed.
And then the last guy that's somewhat notable or pretty notable, I just don't know a lot about him, so I'm fumbling my words here, is Paul Henderson.
I've heard the name.
He played for the Maple Leafs and a couple other teams, more in the vintage kind
smart
of
move, though, from Canada, right? You're at the Toronto Expo. I bet a lot of people from Toronto know who Paul Henderson is or have good stories or relate to him as a player.
And if you want a full list of the guests, because there were a couple others, just go to the website, just search Toronto Sports Cards Expo, and you'll be able to find it. Okay, that being said, we do want to continue and are excited about a couple other more local card show shout-outs this week. The first one we'll mention is here in the U.S. It's the New England Card Show Fall Classic. Instagram user Shea Hockey Cards brought this to our attention, so thank you to him for doing that. It's coming up in a few weeks, October 1st and 2nd in Springfield, Massachusetts. It's $10 to get in. According to Shea Hockey Cards, there's 300 to 400 tables. Well, I think we verified that too. And he was saying there's tons of hockey. So
a lot of hockey. It's next to, I think, the Basketball Hall of Fame, if I remember right. Seems like it's in a good area, or just a lot of activity. Looks like a pretty big show, so that'll be cool, especially if they have a good amount of hockey.
And then the other one that was brought to our attention is the Legendary Collectors on Instagram. The little bit about a month and a half from now, maybe we should have saved this, Troy, but I don't know.
We'll bring it up. We'll bring it up again.
It's in Edmonton, Alberta. Free admission. It's the Oil Country Card Show, October 23rd. And they're accepting, I think they're still accepting some table bookings. So if you're in the Alberta area, or Edmonton area, I should say, and you're looking to set up and sell some cards, you might want to contact them.
Yeah, should we just assume every card show in Canada, every card show in Canada is going to have a ton of hockey? Should we just make that an assumption until we're proven wrong?
Yeah, I don't know. Don't know a lot about it, so. Okay, so that's it for hobby news. Probably our biggest hobby news segment ever. But want to transition to stay a little bit on the vintage topic. And this is something that we are continuing to try to emphasize. And we want to, I think Troy and I are both really interested in vintage. We love vintage. It's going to be hard once the season starts to find time for it, probably, unless there's something crazy noteworthy from a sales perspective. So we're really making an emphasis right now to have some vintage content. One of the things, Troy, that just in doing running our Instagram, and we'll typically, when there's an all-time high sale, it was impossible not to notice that in the last really month for Gordie Howe and his 1951 Parkhurst rookie card, PSA 7 has 2 months in a row basically set an all-time record. So on July 21st via PWCC, it sold for $28,800. And then on August 28th, it sold again for $36,000. And this is a card that's pop 44, so pretty small population like you'd expect. It sold for $36,000 by Heritage, so really in a month went up 25%. And based on that sale, it got me kind of interested in Howe and wanting to learn more about his cards. And the initial question that I guess came to my mind was, is this a coincidence, or is there a run that investors are making on Howe? Is there some just general momentum for all of his cards? And so tried to dig into that a little bit. Starting again, like we did with Crosby and Ovechkin, looking at his card letter player index, which again is about 18 or 20 cards or so within that. That's up 8.5% over the last 12 months. So not bad. Again, you compare to the stock market or crypto. I think anyone would take over the last 12 months, 8.5% growth. So, I think that's a positive trend. From a cards perspective, I kind of looked at two different categories, Troy. I took as like vintage rookie kind of or second, third year type stuff, and then wanted to look at some of the more modern and ultra modern kind of patch autos that we see from a lot of legendary players. So his flagship card, I already mentioned, is the 1951 Parkhurst rookie. The biggest sale on record, it's a population of 2, is actually a PSA 8.5 that last sold for $205,000 in May of 2021. So there's a good chance that if that one of those sold again, probably go a little bit higher. Just for context, a PSA 1 only has a pop of 67. That surprise you? And that last sold for $4,350 in July. I didn't have the time to do this, and maybe somebody will, or I'll find time to do it. But when you have a pop of 67 on your PSA 1, the total pop count for this card probably is pretty small.
Oh, yeah, it's got.
What do you think?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, just given the age and...
Well, kind of good news, too. I mean, if you have an old, beat-up Gordie Howe rookie card, send it to PSA. Yeah. It's worth $4,000.
Maybe worth some money still. Well, even like a PSA 1 Mantle is still worth a ton of money.
I think for that one, too, if you wanted to look up total pop count, probably SGC you'd want to look at as well, too, because it's vintage and their heritage and vintage. I did, as I was combing through all of Gordie Howe's biggest sales, I did see a number of SGC cards in there too. So the pop might be spread out a little bit between PSA and SGC. Beyond his rookie card, then there's really two more years of Parkhurst. So there's 1952 and then 1953. Just to give you an indication, the biggest sale on the second year Parkhurst was a PSA 8 for just under $10,000, $97.50 in December of 2021. So a little less than a year ago. His third year, a PSA 9, ironically went from $18,277 in 2016. So it's kind of crazy that a second year PSA 8 would go for under $10,000, a third year PSA 9 for $18,000. But hey, the hockey card market never completely makes sense. Yeah, we know that. And then beyond that, from a vintage perspective, his first Topps card was a 1954. That seems to be one that's pretty collected pretty frequently. And the highest sale is about $15,600. And it was actually going back, it's an SGC in the old holder. So it was a 96, which is a mint, and I think equivalent to an SGC 9. That's his. So from a vintage standpoint, it's going to be his rookie card, and then his second and third year Parkhurst, and then first year Topps 1954. From ultra modern, there's one card that I really found that had a pretty notable sale. In 2009 Exquisite Collection, there was a rookie patch flashback, game used kind of patch auto. So it's a game used jersey autographed. That sold for this June, actually, BGS 910 for $8,400.
Okay.
And then if you just want a Gordie Howe card, you want like an auto, and you like these kind of stature kind of cards or more modern, ultra modern, there's a whole bunch of them in the 250 to 400 range. So again, the goal here was to give sort of a little bit of an overview of kind of the key Howe cards, and that maybe missed one or two, but that seems to be pretty close.
How much do you think of his run is due to being on the Gong Show Mount Rushmore?
Well, I'm expecting a royalty check pretty soon. Harley the Mastiff is chiming in there.
I swear to God, guys, I'm sorry. That dog, it knows when we're recording, and it's just like, all right, here I go. I'm going to start singing my song, singing the song of my people. So you're going to hear my bull mastiff in the background. I apologize for the extra noise, but she is cute.
Yeah, so that closes out Mr. Hockey. Again, we're going to try to feature and talk about more vintage cards and try to get a lay of the land of, we're so used to what the cards look like for players of today, and just to get a better frame of reference from the legends of the game. And yeah, he probably does owe us a lot of this money, even though he doesn't get it. But okay, so now from Mr. Hockey to 2022-23 Upper Deck MVP was released a week ago. And I don't know, it seems, what's the best word to describe this? Slow?
Yeah, it seems like it's been slow. A lot of just watching online, the breakers and the eBay sales seem slow. I don't know what it is. Like, it's just the timing. I mean, I think MVP, it's usually that first product that comes out, and I actually like it really a lot from like a retail perspective or ripping with kids to have a cheap rip, because you can get a hobby box for $50 or $56, I think is what last time I saw. So it's actually affordable. And even on the retail side, get blasters or whatever,
sure,
and those come out for really cheap at like Target or Walmart.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the timing in that we really hit the sort of, it seems like, dead spot of the off season in the last week, or if it's that there's been so many new releases lately and this big backlog that Upper Deck is trying to get through, that is there too many releases in a weird way? I don't know.
It could be. And plus right now it's like hobby people, right? Usually the first releases are the hobby boxes, and maybe the hobby people just aren't excited about MVP. It does have autos, but it doesn't have a ton of autos. The chase cards are not as high end, obviously, given what the product is. I don't think Upper Deck's trying to hide that or anything. It just seems like there's not a lot of momentum right now for MVP.
The other question or theory would be at least the crop of rookies that they included in the, because all rookies in MVP are short printed.
Yep.
Are they just not doing it for collectors? Right. Yeah. And there could be a lot of reasons for that. You look at, so if you look at when, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a second when we go through pricing, but last year MVP came out at the end of December, on December 21st. So a lot of these guys, the Cole Caulfields and Quentin Byfields and Jeremy Swaymans and Trevor Zagreses that were in it, they had played for 2.5 months.
Yep.
And which gave them opportunity for people to see them, for them to produce a little bit, and for some general excitement. The big four that it seems like out of MVP are Matty Beniers, who had a good 10-game run.
Yep.
Owen Power, who, real small run last year as well. Marco Rossi for the Wild, who really hasn't really ever played much at the NHL level. And then Boldy, who had a really good year, but he didn't finish fantastic from what I remember. Like, he was much better the first half of his rookie year than he was the second half, or at least in the playoffs, didn't do a lot. And so maybe that kind of cooled the hype a little bit on, him coming into next season. But yeah, I don't know what the answer is. It just doesn't seem like people are real excited at this point. If you looking at sales real quick, again, they've been pretty slow. There's not a ton for each of these players. So I just looked at the big four: Owen Power, Beniers, Boldy and Rossi. We'll start with Boldy, his silver script, which is kind of the parallel shorter print of the base rookie. Selling for about $20, base for about $5. And then he's the one rookie that also has a base card or a standalone card and then the checklist. And so the checklist is going for $6 there. Marco Rossi, not a lot of sales, base $3.50. There's a couple autos that have sold for in the $130 range. Again, not a ton of sales. Owen Power, the base selling for around 14, silver scripts for about 20, and then Matty Beniers seems to have the most card momentum, at least. His silver script is in the 12 to 13 range. I kind of chalk that up to just Kraken fans being excited to have a rookie to chase. There also has been a couple DP1 redemptions, so that's draft pick 1 for Yaroslav Slavkovsky. Those are going for about $100.
That's interesting. Okay.
People being really excited, I think, about the number 1 pick, and I guarantee you, if you have it, sell it now, and you could buy that back a few months, probably for a lot less than $100. So to help answer the question, what is happening? Why is it so slow? Is it in fact so slow? Is this just what always happens with MVP? I did want to compare a little bit to last year, and again, it's not a super fair comparison because this year's MVP came out the 1st of September. A month before the season. Last year came out December 21st after the season had started. But just looking quickly at Caulfield, Zegras, Byfield, and Swayman, in their first week, Caulfield was going for about $15, Zegras $30, Byfield, and I was looking at silver scripts here. Byfield was base or wasn't a silver script, that was $12, and then Swayman silver script about $20. So it is sort of in the realm of, and honestly, I think there's a little bit more sales in the 2021-22 version, so Caulfield, Zegras, Byfield, and Swayman's year than currently, but not a lot. And maybe it's just this is a more of a retail product that's not to expect a lot at this point. I don't know, Troy, any other comments or thoughts on MVP?
It was really just the slowness, and that's just what stood out to me the most. And looking for sales, there's just not a lot out there.
And again, it could pick up because there is going to be a gap, right, between the start of the season and Series 1. Series 1 right now, most of the sites have middle of November. And not all these guys, for instance, Quentin Byfield was in MVP last year and not until Series 2.
Series 2.
Right? So if any of these guys, whether it be the 4 we've mentioned or some of the other short print rookies, if they get off to a fast start, we might see sales tick up a little bit in that in-between period too. So let's cover new releases. There really is not a lot to say, to be honest. It's a little bit, again, back to the broken record.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of really clear indication as of right now as what is coming out next. We've talked about this, but I think it's worth repeating. We don't have the Upper Deck release schedule on hand. The biggest sort of inclination, there's 2 kind of markers you use is whatever date the online retailers have, like Blowout or Steel City or Cloud Sanchara or Dave and Adams. But a lot of these guys use holding dates. So if you went to Dave and Adams right now, you're going to have 8 products between September 29th and 30th. And obviously that's not how the products are going to be released. And then the more clear indication that a release is imminent is when the checklist comes out, and there hasn't been a checklist released for any of these products. So not a lot. I can't really say what's coming next. What I thought I would do really quickly, though, is talk about the big picture a little bit. And so if you look at what hasn't come out yet, right? So we're on the precipice of the 2022 season. We've already had one 2022 product, MVP, come out. The Cup from 2020 still hasn't been released. Nope. So now we're going 3 seasons back. And then here's, Troy, is a list of the 2021. So this would be the Caulfield, Zegras, Swayman, McTavish rookie year, right? Here's the products that still have not come out yet. Credentials, Artifacts, SPX, SP Game Used, Allure, OPG Platinum, Synergy, Ice, Skybox Metal Universe, Stature, SP Authentic, Black Diamond, Premier, Clear Cut, and the Cup. So if you include the Cup from 2020 as well, that's 16 products that from 2021 or prior still haven't been released. So is it fair to say that they're like a year behind?
I mean, yeah. I mean, as long as, and if nothing comes out, I mean, yes, they're behind. Can all these still come out? I mean, we've seen our comments. People are like, why is this coming out? Just get rid of that, the commentary from our listeners and readers, which, hey, some of it's valid. I don't know how do you ever catch up if you have 16 products you're behind?
So there's got to be roughly about 20 then for 2020, or the same at least for 2022 or more. So 20. If you wanted to be caught up for the 2023 season, a year from now, you'd have to release 36 products in 52 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, is that even sustainable in the market?
Yeah.
Right? How many people are going to...
I just sit here and scratch my head because I'm trying to do mental math, and it's just nothing. I don't know how you catch up without just maybe cutting some. I mean, they've cut product in the past, so I'm wondering just what the next announcements will be, or will they just keep trying to play catch up, and eventually somewhere down the road, 2 to 3 years, they'll finally get them all out and they'll be at the current season. But I don't know. I know they've brought on new factories. I mean, they've said that, like printing facilities and stuff. So maybe get those online, and maybe they're pumping out cards. But with all the other stuff you have to do, like the signings and
I want to be clear too that I don't see this as a criticism. No. This is more. I can't personally figure out how they're going to do this. Yeah. I'm assuming they have a whole bunch of really smart people that are smarter than me, and definitely will have a plan to figure it out. Yeah, it'll be very fascinating to watch. And the thing I keep coming back to is, like you said, okay, you can bring on every factory on Earth.
Yeah.
How can the market sustain 35, 30, 40
you might be flooding the market
year?
with just too much product.
Yeah. At that point, I don't know. It'll be curious to see how they manage that. Mm-hmm. All right. We're at the time of the show, Troy. Personal pickups. We'll let you start.
Yep, I will start with the complete failure. So I got nothing. I put in the notes, life got in the way, but part of it was that. Part of it was just I sucked. Like I had a bunch of cards I was watching on eBay. I'd get the notification, 15 minutes left. My mind would go off doing something else. I'd get distracted, and all of a sudden I'd realize it, look down, it was like 35 minutes ago, and I totally missed the card I was looking for, which there was 2 or 3 that I would have bought. I know I would have been the highest bidder, but I totally botched it, just everything going on and me being dumb at times and totally missed out.
Yeah, you're a sniper, right?
Yeah, I'm one of those. I wait till the end. Because a lot of times it's like if I'm really interested in something and it makes my watch list, I want it. Like I don't like I'm going to go for it.
Well, I actually bought 2 cards, not a lot, but one of them was a 2019 OPG Platinum Jack Hughes Rainbow parallel. I actually got this in the mail today. I'm going to show you, Troy.
All right.
See, it's right here.
Nice.
You can't really see the rainbow, but actually this card looks really, really nice. I might send it in for grading, but that probably means I'll get a 4 coming back because I have the worst luck ever sending cards in for grading.
Would you send it to one of the new grading companies as a test?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question.
Just right. If you do, now we got to remember this. If you do tag, I think it's a 10 card minimum, but I don't know. I didn't look at the other one.
Okay. We'll have to look into
Knox.
I'd probably send it to tag before I sent it to Arena. Just to give them a first crack. But and then the other one I got is a 2021. It's from Black Diamond, the most recent release. It's an exquisite collection. Spencer Knight Gold rookie out of 99. So there's no jersey or patch or auto. It's just more like a exquisite base card with gold foiling numbered to 99. My personal favorite card brand is Exquisite, so I'm pretty much a sucker, and it was $7, so I thought,
why not?
Can't go wrong there. All right, anything else, Troy? We forgot anything this week? Are we good?
I don't think that'll be a record, but that was a long show for what I thought beginning the week, or after our last show, after a couple of days of the news and everything. I was like, we're gonna get this thing out in like 50 minutes, and of course the hockey card god said, no, you're not. We got some plans for you. So. No, good show. A lot of awesome topics and content. I love it.
23 days from the NHL season. Cannot wait for that. Thank you all for listening, of course, and your continued support. If you don't already follow us on social media, make sure you follow us on Instagram at Hockey Cards Gongshow. We're on Facebook as well, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. Just search Hockey Cards Gongshow and you'll find us. I hope you have an amazing week, and we can't wait to be back a week from today. See you later.